Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first of many lectures around the foundations of business thought, starting with critical thinking. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you can all see and hear me okay. So, do me a favor, just give me a quick note. Let me know if you can see and hear me. Hey, Madison, good morning. All right, Noel, Timothy, sounds like we're all set. So we got Madison too. Awesome. All right. So, welcome to our first live stream, the first of many. And with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay. So, just a couple things to kind of orientate you to what's going on. Oh, perfect. Looks like we got Jared and Jeremy and Joseph with Jared, Jeremy, and Joseph. Wow. That's going to be like a band, right? Just to kind of show you a little bit about what we have going on here, I'm going to be presenting some materials. We'll be doing some little kind of quizzes, if you will, and so forth. And then you also see right below me, yeah, right there, it says awesome comments, contributors, referencing past lectures, and real world examples. Here's the idea. Yeah, right, Jeremy, say that 3 times fast. Here's the idea. Each time I get a contribution from a different person, we'll get a point there. And each time I get an awesome comment, we'll get a markup there, right? You see, it just keeps going. And then each time we reference a past lecture, including from another class, it doesn't have to be just this class. Anytime you reference a past lecture that you've ever received or a past reference, and anytime you make a comment that connects what we're talking about here to the real world, like to your job or to your family or to school, something like that, making a real world connection from theory to application, then we'll get kind of a build-up of points there. Trust me, you want to see those points build up because there'll be a little something if we can get those up there. All right. So we'll just kind of let that go and see how it works out. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about critical thinking today. Specifically, we're going to define it. What is critical thinking? So to do this, I want you to take a couple of moments. We're going to go to another slide here in a moment, but all I'm going to say is Utah drivers. Utah drivers. Tell me what comes to mind. What do you think when I say Utah drivers? Okay, so I'm going to give us a couple of minutes here. And here we go. And then when we come back, we're going to take a look at our comments. Okay, let's come back and take a look at some of these comments. These are fantastic. By the way, Oh, we got 10 people right off, more than 10. Oh, hold on, hold on. I'm doing the wrong one. I apologize. Give me a moment here, folks. I mean, you got to give me a second to get all this funky technology to work, right? So, right off, we got 10 contributors. So, haha, fantastic. This is what I like to see because let's face it, it's tough to do these remote lectures. So we got 10 contributors. We're going to run with that. Now let's take a look at some of your comments here. And I'm going to give you some of the comments as well because we've got some really awesome ones here. So a lot of them we started off with like bad drivers, impatient, okay? Reacting to California drivers, hold on to that. No blinkers, minivans, holy smoke, yeah, right. In offensive rather than defensive driving. Forget how to drive in the snow, like to pass people, then slow down in front of them. That one's from Aaron. I particularly like that one. Drive super. So Mason, yeah, tailgating like nobody's business, right? But then here's the thing. Jeremy, by the way, Mario also said drive too slowly or they drive too fast, no in between, right? Jeremy said, you all need to live in Southern California for a while so you can appreciate Utah drivers a lot more. If it rains, they start sliding, all, bad tires, all that sort of stuff. Okay, very good. Now, here's where I want to take this. When I said Utah drivers, what criteria are you using, right? So when we assess a certain state's population in terms of driving, we somehow or another come up with criteria. Well, I didn't specify criteria, trick question, right? I didn't specify criteria. So what criteria did we use? Well, let me offer you some criteria. First of all, you're all Utah drivers. Sorry, hate to tell you, you are a Utah driver. You presumably live in Utah and you drive in Utah, ergo you're a Utah driver. Now you might say, no, I grew up in California, I grew up in Minnesota, Timothy, how dare you, I love it, right? It doesn't matter where you grew up, you're a Utah driver because everybody else around you driving, you don't know where they grew up. Why is it that you get a free pass? Because, well, I grew up in California, which is true. I learned to drive in California. Therefore, I'm not a Utah driver? Nah, I don't get a free pass. If you're on the roads in Utah, you're a Utah driver. Interesting. Okay, let's keep looking at some other criteria. So, let me tell you something. The average, now that's not everybody in this class, right? We are different, okay? But I'm just saying the average age of a Salt Lake Community College student is 20 years. That means that the average SLIC student has been driving for 7 years, okay? 7 years. However, the average age of a typical Utah driver is 40. Which means the average Utah driver has been driving for 24 years. And so for somebody who has been driving for 7 years to say that somebody who has been driving for 24 years doesn't know what they're doing, well, that's incongruent, right? So just a criteria to think about. Let's look at another criteria. When it comes to deaths per capita, Utah is 38th in the nation, which means only 12 states have a better deaths per capita ratio than Utah. Utah is actually extraordinarily safe. When it comes to drunk driving deaths, Utah's the tops. We have the least drunk driving deaths of any state in the union. Not bad, right? Now, speeding. Utah ranks high for speeding. The average highway speed of a Utah driver is 73 miles per hour. Although, while that is high, as you see here, Utah is on the high side. We're not even in the top 5, okay, but we are high, so that's a valid criteria. Road rage, Utah is not even in the top 10 when it comes to cases of road rage. We are able to keep road rage fairly under control, okay? So here's the thing. The question is, has this at all changed your answer? Now, I'm not going to ask you to, if you want to chime in or something, you can. But here's the idea, is that when I said Utah drivers, what we responded with was just this gut reaction, right? Just a reflex action. And we tend to really visualize ourselves as much better than the average Joe. And we don't really look at the criteria. We don't look at the data. We're not really kind of looking at the big picture. As Timothy says there, and I'm going to bring that back over to, I'm continuing to get awesome comments here. So give us a few more there. We're not really thinking critically about the question. Now, to be fair, I set you up for that, right? All I said was Utah drivers. I didn't critically ask the question. Therefore, I did not invite you to critically think about it. But critical thinking is what we need to look at. Jeremy also says, I've lived in 6 states and they're in 3 countries, and unless you've lived elsewhere, you cannot appreciate Utah drivers. Now, personally, awesome comment. I agree. I've lived in many, many places, and there's been 1 or 2 that I've thought, well, these are actually pretty darn good drivers. But Utah's not bad. However, it kind of depends on where you grew up, because I think California drivers are all right, but that's crazy talk, right? Okay, so let's keep going here. I want to define critical thinking for us, because this is what we need to take a look at. Critical thinking is that mode of thinking about any subject, content, or problem, doesn't matter what. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up a little highlighter here, okay, in which the thinker improves the quality of his or her thinking by skillfully analyzing, assessing, and reconstructing it, okay? So what do we mean by analyze, assess, and reconstruct? Well, when we analyze our thinking, and it's our thinking, it is inward thinking, inward looking. Critical thinking is self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitoring, self-critical, okay? But let's go back to what we mean by analyze, assessing, and reconstructing. Analyze is, okay, I'm going to take all my assumptions, all my opinions, all my data about a particular topic, and I am going to lay them out on the card, right? So I'm breaking the question or my response to a question down to its constituent parts. It's like taking apart an engine. If the engine isn't working, you take it apart, you lay it out, and then we assess the value of our opinions, of our assumptions, of our data, of our learnings, of our past experience, what have you. Just as in rebuilding an engine, we assess the value and kind of quality or condition of each one of the parts. So as we looked at our response, we broke it down into its constituent parts, analyzed. Then we assess the value and we throw out things that we realize, well, that doesn't really make sense. Okay, I didn't really consider that. And then we reconstruct it. We reconstruct our approach, our analysis based on what we have analyzed and assessed. Now, we're going to do some experiments and some examples today, but that's what critical thinking is about. Now, it's important to realize, though, and this is really important, is critical thinking is self-directed. It's not about pointing fingers at somebody else. It's about assessing our own assumptions and opinions and kind of values, if you will, just as we did with Utah drivers. We said, okay, well, now that I've looked at the data and considered some things with Utah drivers, maybe they're not so bad after all. Okay. It presupposes assent to rigorous standards of excellence and mindful command of their use. Meaning, hey, you know what? We are going to intelligently, mindfully, deliberately really examine our assessment and our analysis and then reconstruct it in a way that creates something of greater value. It entails effective communication and problem-solving abilities, as well as commitment to overcome our native egocentrism and sociocentrism. Okay, let's explain that one because that's a really important one. Native egocentrism and sociocentrism. Native means inherent to who we are. It's inside us. It's part of us. Okay, it's just who we are. Egocentrism is we really don't like to admit when we're wrong. We are egotistical, not egotistical as in conceited, but we are egotistical in that we take care of our own feelings and our own kind of view of the world because it's who we are. It's how we define ourselves and it's how we see the world. And so when we start to challenge our own assumptions about ourselves, our egocentrism is going to throw up walls and really going to try to get in the way. So, for example, when Timothy earlier, when I said, hey, you're all Utah drivers, he said, how dare you? That's egocentrism. Of course, he's joking, right? He has the LOL afterwards, ergo, he's off scot-free. But here's the point. Our egocentrism said, how dare you call me a Utah driver, right? Well, you are, just that way. Sociocentrism means what kind of communities you belong to, and you protect the views of those communities. So, for example, in politics, we have Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, progressive, middle of the road, centrist, all kinds of things, right? Well, do you vote straight party ticket? Well, that's very sociocentric, meaning if you just vote straight party ticket, you're not really thinking about the candidates and their positions and so on and so forth. You're voting with the party. Now, don't get me wrong. People very, 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 very close to me, whom I love and their judgment I trust implicitly, vote straight party ticket. So it's not a bash. What I'm simply saying is that is us taking care of our sociocentric view of the world. Same thing comes with a religion. My religion is right, ergo every other religion is wrong. That's sociocentric because we're taking care of the community to which we belong, okay? Jeremy says, I vote for the best candidate that is inclined to, align with my values and so forth. And exactly. The idea is that if we do that, if we vote for a candidate who aligns with our values, that means you need to learn about the candidate, and you need to learn about their values, and you need to learn about their background, and you need to learn about their voting record, and you need to learn about, what activities they did throughout their 40-year career. And it's like, screw that. I just need to know if there's a D or an R next to their name. That way I don't have to do the critical thinking. Okay. That's where we tend to fall quite often. Okay. Aaron says, but learning about their background takes effort. Bingo. That's the thing. Learning about their background really does take serious effort. And so we've got 10 awesome comments. Very good. I love this stuff. Okay. Keep it coming. Okay. So let's keep looking at that. Let's keep going along with this. So I want to introduce you to some ideas of the idea of thinking errors. Now, I want to be really clear. This is highly simplistic. we are breaking down the idea of thinking errors into really binary language. And anytime you try to take anything that's very, very complex and very gray and try to break it down into binary, it's going to be overly simplistic. Nevertheless, this is a good place to start. Okay. So, thinking errors really kind of occur when we have a clash between two worlds that do not align. One is the reality, and the other is our perception of reality. Now, here's the thing. Don't get all high and mighty on the idea of, oh, yeah, some people don't perceive reality as reality. None of us do. None of us do. Okay? The only way we can interact with reality is through our senses. And our senses are really, really, really easy to trick, right? Furthermore, our perception is filtered through all of our life experiences, through our upbringing, through our communities, through our parents, through our friends, and so on and so forth. Every single one of us and everybody who has ever walked the face of the earth or who will ever walk the face of the earth perceives reality differently. Okay? So, it's not a question of who perceives it, most correct, right? So let's set that up. Now, here's how it works. Let's say that something is true in reality. And we're going to define truth here in a little bit, but bear with me. Let's say that something is true in reality, and we perceive that truth and we accept it. There's no thinking error. So let's take the earth is round. Well, it's more kind of oblique. It's flattened because centrifugal force as it spins means it's a little fatter around the edges. But let's just say round. So the earth is round. Well, that is a truth. It has been measured and proven by means of the scientific method over and over. It's been replicated time after time. We know the earth is round. And I accept that the earth is round. Ergo, there's no thinking error because my perception aligns with reality as we know it. Okay, great. But now let's say that we reject something that is proven true. So if I say, no, I reject the assertion that the earth is round, well, then I am committing a type 1 thinking error. Okay, let's go ahead and get a pointer here. Where's a pointer? Here we go. I'm committing a type 1 thinking error. Something is scientifically proven true. We're going to talk about this, okay? Just because something is scientifically proven true doesn't mean it's true. This is actually Thursday's lecture, so stay tuned. If something is scientifically proven true and I reject that scientific truth, I am committing a type 1 thinking error, okay? All right, let's go on. So, what about if something is false and I agree and therefore I reject it as a truth? Well, so let's say that somebody says the earth is flat. I reject that and therefore I reject it as a truth. There's no thinking error here. On the other hand, if somebody says the earth is flat and I say I agree with you, I then accept it as a truth. That is a type 2 thinking error, okay? Now, I used flat earth, but let's look at things that are a little more near and dear to our hearts, okay? Let's take, for example, going to school. Boom, going to school. So I am going to assert that earning a college degree increases your earning potential. Earning a college degree increases your earning potential. Well, if you agree with that, and odds are you do because you're here, right? Then there's no thinking error. On the other hand, now bear with me, let's say well, depending on what your degree is in, Jeremy, but it increases an earning potential. I didn't say promises, guarantees, potential. All right. So, what about if somebody were to say, baloney, what about Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Jim Carrey, Bill Gates? None of these people have a bachelor's degree. Every single one of them dropped out of college. So now in this case, we're bringing a fact to the discussion, right? It is a fact that Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Jim Carrey, and Bill Gates all left college. That's an indisputable fact. Ergo, it could be tempting to say that because it's an indisputable fact, it's not a thinking error. Not necessarily. These folks, first of all, okay, so Aaron, you just nailed it there, right? They're outliers, okay? Outliers meaning there's always an exception to every rule. You can find any situation and find something that's kind of errant from the major data set. These are outliers. Second of all, I want you to think about the schools they dropped out of. They didn't drop, they just left. We're talking Harvard, Stanford, right? The fact of the matter is, these people were totally on track for mega success. And they had the network, they had the intelligence, they had the opportunity, they had the means, and the opportunity was right there. And they either had to chase the opportunity or stay 2 more years to get that degree. No. You chase the opportunity, right? So that's where sometimes people can bring actual facts to the discussion, but still be experiencing a thinking error. Now, on the other hand, follow my 12-step plan and you can earn $12,000 a week. Where do I sign up? That's a thinking error, okay? You're accepting a falsehood as truth. Yeah, not going to work, okay? All right, now here's the thing. It feels ridiculous until it's not, right? Here's a news story. It's a few years old where this gal got herself into some trouble because, well, conspiracy theorists arrested for death threats against Sandy Hook parents. There was a conspiracy theory going around that the Sandy Hook shooting was a myth, that it didn't really happen. And so she took it upon herself to start sending death threats to parents of children who were killed in the Sandy Hook massacre. Well, that's a type 1 thinking error because the Sandy Hook shooting did in fact take place and she rejects it. Happens on the other side. In Washington, pizzeria attack, fake news brought real gun, right? Well, this is the conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton was running a children's sex slave ring out of a pizzeria. I don't know how somebody comes up with that in the first place. It's incredible, right? Pizzagate. Well, somebody decided to take it upon himself to, save these children, so brought a gun to a pizzeria. Makes perfect sense. Now, these are far extremes of this, right? But the fact of the matter is, these kind of critical thinking errors can happen all the way down to whether or not I should go to school, to whether or not I should bring a gun to a pizzeria. It's the same sort of thinking errors. We're just looking at the extremes. Nevertheless, I would hazard to guess that many of you have friends who have chosen not to go to college, who have said, you know what, a college degree doesn't matter. I don't see the point. I'm earning $15 an hour. I'm earning $16, $17 an hour right now. There's no point in going to college. A college degree will not increase my earning potential. This is a thinking error. The statistics do not support that. And yet, maybe you at some point had to overcome that to say, no, I really need to return to school. Now, here's the thing. Whoa, sorry about that. What's going on? Well, we're confusing facts with opinions and with beliefs. So let's take a moment and let's define all three of these. All right. First, we are going to define facts, right? Facts, and Jeremy, I agree with you. Trade schools, fantastic. Do not diss trade schools, because I could go on and on and on about that, because we need more tradespeople, because the ones out there are totally retiring. So I'm going to count that as, here we go. That's a real world example. Thank you. Okay, a fact is something which has been observed, measured, and proven to be true by means of the scientific method. So the scientific method says we observe something, we measure it, and we replicate it over and over and over. And if you can replicate it and measure it and get the same results over and over and over, then whatever you're observing and measuring is, by the definition of truth, true. Okay. Now, Aaron, yeah, I could have earned a more as an auto mechanic than an ERRN. Boy, it's really true. It all depends on market demand. We're actually going to talk about that in this course. So when something is a fact, we've observed it, we've measured it, we've replicated it. It is a fact that this microphone is picking up my voice, because we can in fact observe that it's picking up my voice. We can measure it by gain and by volume, and I can replicate it over and over and over. So it's in no dispute that the microphone is picking things up. Now, that is in juxtaposition to an opinion. An opinion is a subjective statement which we hold about something that we perceive in the facts. So, for example, the microphone is picking up my voice. That is a fact. However, whether or not you think the gain is set properly, the volume of the pickup is set properly, is an opinion, because your hearing is different than my hearing, than somebody else's hearing. And so where you should set the volume, that's just a subjective opinion, right? Same thing on whether or not my voice is as annoying as all get out, right? You're having to listen to this crap for an hour or so. Is it annoying? Well, that's an opinion. The fact that my voice, exists in a certain audio bandwidth, that's a scientific fact. Whether or not the audio band is annoying to your ears, that's an opinion. Okay. Now, I like to say that opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone's got one and they're pretty useless. It's not that an opinion is right or wrong. You can't really measure an opinion with right or wrong. It's subjective. It's up to the individual's perception. Therefore, if you say that my voice is annoying, well, you might be right, you might be wrong. That's not really a measure we can give. If it's annoying to you, it's definitely annoying. And if somebody else is like, oh no, that's totally soothing, I want Lon to rock me to sleep each night, well, then for them, that's correct. Nobody thinks that. Okay, then what's a belief? All right, well, a belief is when we embrace something as a guiding value in our lives, one that is really founded on, a deep sense of faith, a deep sense of moral truth. Okay, now, beliefs and opinions are actually very, very similar. The thing that really makes them different is to the extent to which you embrace it as kind of an unwavering moral guiding value. Okay, so for example, I have as a moral guiding value that my relationship with my wife is everything to me. And I want to support her in every single endeavor that she does. it's not simply that it's my opinion that a husband should support his wife or his partner. Okay. In my case, happens to be my wife, but it could be a partner, right? It's not that I feel that one partner should support the other. I believe that in terms of my opinion. But for me, it's such an intractable belief that it really guides all my decisions in how I do things. And if somebody challenges that belief, I'll get pretty defensive. Whereas if somebody challenges an opinion, so what? Right? So if somebody says, okay, Lon, you say that California drivers are better than Utah drivers, I disagree. I'm like, yeah, whatever, fine. That's just an opinion. I don't care. But if you say, no, Lon, I think that, supporting your wife and her career and her schooling and so forth, you're kind of letting go of what it means to be a man. I'm gonna be like, dude, those are fighting words, right? That's the difference between opinion and belief. Hayden there said, I feel like the question is it ethical fits with the idea of a belief. I agree with you. That would be an awesome comment, right? We almost need to start those over because I'm getting a lot of awesome comments. By the way, there's going to be a payoff for this, right? But Hayden, I want to key in on what he said. Ethics tend to be, and we're going to talk about ethics in depth in this lecture series, so hold in there. Ethics are more on the side of belief, something that we really hold as a guiding North Star in our lives. I totally agree with you. Let's see. Okay, so Jeremy, very good. We've got a connection with another class. In my communication class, we discuss why our upbringing shapes your views. They're shaped by families, friends, communities, religion. Totally. Completely, totally, right? Our psychographics are really shaped by our communities and our families and so on and so forth. And so that is absolutely not only a reference to past lecture, but also a great real world example. Okay. Very good. Okay. So let's keep going. You're doing great. All right, so why do we care about this stuff? You're in a business class, for crying out loud. I mean, it's going to feel like a philosophy class, which is so cool because I love philosophy. But you're in a business class. You're here to, increase your marketability and value proposition to employers or to customers if you start your own business. Well, because you know what? Like the Wall Street Journal here says, bosses really want critical thinkers. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you some examples through my experience of where business leaders failed to exercise critical thinking and what that came about. Now, I want to do this with a few caveats, a few sort of setups, right? First of all, critical thinking is not about pointing things out in others, even though I'm about to point things out in others. Okay. I'm doing this to share an example. Critical thinking is inward looking. All right. Inward looking. And I'll share with you examples of where I exercise critical thinking in my own life. Second thing is when I point out that somebody else failed to exercise critical thinking, this is not an indictment of their intelligence, of their competence, of their commitment, of their ethics, of their values, anything like that. Really, really, really smart, competent, experienced, educated people make critical thinking errors all the time. I do, you do, we all do. But so that we can understand what they look like and the effects they can have, I'm going to point outside a little bit, but trust me, it'll come back in. Okay? So, with that, folks, I used to work for Intel Corporation. They're the ones who make the semiconductors in good computers. If you're running AMD, it's a piece of crap. But if you're running Intel, you've got an awesome computer. By the way, that statement of mine lacked critical thinking. Okay. part of the time that I was there, we were one of the CEOs when I was there was Paul Otellini. And I was at Intel during the whole time that we're about to look at here. When I was there, one of the, we had a downturn in the recession, right? We had a pretty bad economic recession. Nowhere near what we're going through right now, but back then it was a pretty big deal. And I remember specifically, I was in a conference room. Actually, it was a big conference room. I wasn't that high up in the company. But I was in a conference room with Paul Otellini, and he was speaking. And he said, you know what? I've been through, during the course of my career with Intel, I've been through 7 recessions. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. We're going to be fine. And I remember thinking, really? Are you sure? Because this one looks pretty big. Well, let's take a look at some of his statements, all right? So I'm going to pull up my pointer. I've got that. So this was in April of 2008. Stock price 21.5, not bad. People turned to computers to improve their productivity during a downturn because at the end of the day, the computer is the tool for productivity. Besides, much of our sales growth has been in emerging markets, India, China, Eastern Europe, and I don't see them going through recession. Okay, now, I want to point something out. He is bringing facts to the discussion. It is a fact that computers are tools of productivity. It is a fact that in past recessions, people turned to computers to increase their productivity. It was a fact that India, China, and Eastern Europe were emerging markets. However, one of the things that you're going to be asked in this course is, are business principles scientific facts? Okay, this is something you're going to see in your next reading. And the author of that reading, Edward Ng, contends that business principles are not scientific facts. They change, they're ever evolving, they're just what happened yesterday doesn't mean it's going to happen today. But Paul Otellini, a brilliant, wonderful man, is making the mistake of thinking that past history means future guarantees. Let's continue and take a look at what he says. A few months later, the stock price is going up. Things are looking good. Intel says business remains unaffected by the economic headwinds set loose by the subprime crisis. So between April and July, janvier, février, mars, avril, mai, juin, juillet. So 4 months, he's on target. Let's go ahead like 5 months into the future. Stock price drops by like 30% or more, almost half. I mean, I don't know, 30, 40%. Intel's chief executive believes the current economic turmoil is the worst in his lifetime. And Wall Street is increasingly of the mind that the chip giant will not escape the crisis unscathed. Quote from Paul, "My sense is that this is the deepest one I've experienced in my lifetime." Well, now that's a change of perspective, right? Because reality can be a real cold, harsh splash in the face, right? By the way, a few years later when he retired, he said the one thing he wished is that he had been more present about the economic downturn. He admitted that he read that one wrong. Okay. Well, I'm going to pick on Paul just a little bit more. All right. He's in an interview with Kai Ryssdal in Planet Money. Not Planet, is it Planet Money? No, Marketplace. And so he's in an interview with Kai Ryssdal of Marketplace. And Kai Ryssdal says, where's my pointer? There's my pointer. Found my pointer. Here we sit at the world's largest chip company in what is arguably a post-computer world. Where does the company go from here? Ottolini, well, I have a hard time with your assertion, first of all. It's not arguably a post-computer world. It is a world which is still in the Model T stage of computing. Holy heck. Talk about a difference of perception of reality, right? So Kai Ryssdal is saying we have moved completely on from computers. We are now in the mobile world. And Ottolini says we haven't even begun to touch computers. We're in the Model T, the Ford Model T stage. We're still just toying with these things. That's a huge gap. That's a chasm in perception of reality. Well, Ryssdal goes on to say, it's interesting you mention that because obviously people aren't buying computers now, which is why you are seeing sales fall and your orders to your company and your factories are down. Here's a fact. Well, they're still buying computers, but not as many as you would like, right? They're struggling with what is the correct perception of reality. Now watch this. Ottolini, they're buying 30% less than where we were at our peak last year. So 30% less than our peak last year. But it's still, I could argue they're at 70% of where they were. Glass half full versus glass half empty. And part of this is replacement, part of it is people finding new uses, and part of that is first-time buyers and the emerging markets, part of the new price points. He's going on to all the old world views of why people buy computers. And he is suggesting that 70% of where you were is a win. That's wild. That is really wild. Jeremy, there's more computer power in a smartphone than in the lunar lander that took astronauts to the moon. You're absolutely right. And by the way, Ottolini missed out on the mobile market. This is the one that really kind of put Intel behind for a good long while. Ottolini said Intel had the chance to be an integral part of Apple's iPhone project by manufacturing its processors that power the device. But the executive decided against moving forward on what would have been a winning bid. This is what he had. We ended up not winning or passing on it, depending on how you view it. Yeah, apparently you have an issue with how people view things. And the world would have been a lot different had we done it. The thing you have to remember is this was before the iPhone was introduced, and no one knew what the iPhone would do. Well, you know what, Paul? You're the CEO of the world's largest tech company. It's sort of your job to look ahead, to think of things out critically, to look at the market, and to see what things would do. Apparently, a lot of people, including Steve Jobs and Apple, had an idea of what it would do. At the end of the day, they couldn't do it. It was one of those things that you can make up on volume, and in hindsight, the forecasted cost was wrong, and the volume was 100 times what anyone thought. In other words, he forecasted the cost of the chip incorrectly, and he did not forecast the volume in terms of sales of the iPhone. It would have been monumental to Intel. But because of thinking errors, he missed out on those. Okay? Now, again, I really want to stress, critical thinking is not about pointing the finger at other people, right? If you're looking for a license to troll the internet and practice recreational outrage and so forth, critical thinking isn't your golden ticket, okay? Critical thinking is about calling out our own egocentric and sociocentric thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes, not those of others. Now, this is important through this whole lecture series because throughout this entire series, we are going to challenge our assumptions, our beliefs, our opinions, our facts over and over and over. And while it is not required as you watch these lectures that you change your mind on anything, it is required that you analyze, assess, and reconstruct your thoughts such that you have a deeper understanding of where you stand. You might be right on something. The question won't be, are you right? The question is, do you have a good sense of why you are right? Same thing with if we're wrong. All right. We need to become very, very comfortable with discovering that we're wrong. Now, to that point, I would like to strongly recommend, and I'll go ahead and put the link down in the description of this video, but you can also just Google it, TED Talk on being wrong. This video is excellent. She does a monumental job of explaining why it is that we resist the idea that we're wrong and what power there is in accepting that we could be wrong with things. Okay? So, folks, that's our core lecture for today. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick around to answer questions or anything like that. For those of you who are not in the class but kind of just checking it out, the lecture is over. Thank you very much for joining us. Continue to come back. When we come back on Thursday at the same time, we're going to continue our discussion on critical thinking and talk about dogma and axioms and where these things kind of tempt us into shutting off critical thinking. So be sure to stick around for that on Thursday. In the meantime, let me come back over to the class and see if there are any questions that I can help answer about assignments, this lecture, anything at all. And by the way, folks, here's what I'd like to ask you to do. Oh, thank you, Mason. I appreciate that. Hey, you know, guys, so we did this thingamajig here. Do me a favor. You're online right now. Send me an email. Send me an email that says 9/22/10. Just 9/22/10. Because that tells me that at 9:22 a.m. Utah time, I invited you to send me an email because you guys hit 10 on awesome comments and contributors. You've got some extra credit coming your way. You were so engaged and so part of the conversation, you deserve some points. That way I can encourage engagement and discussion and contributions during these live streams. So send me an email, 9/22/10, you'll get some points. Jeremy, you say there's a question about the quiz that was not part of our readings that you highlighted, just a heads up. Go ahead and send me an email on that. Let me know what that was and let's explore that. Does just the Canvas message work, Hayden? Sure does. Canvas message, send that over to me. You will be in great shape. All right. Sounds good, Jeremy. You'll follow up on that? Great. Great. So any other questions, let me know, and we'll go ahead and get that set up. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. We'll see you Thursday. We're going to continue to have great discussions, so I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk to you later.